on page 2, consideration of a resolution of the Commission of Knox County, Tennessee, reappointing commissioners to serve on the Arena Use Committee, Resolution 110.
Are there names to be added to the blank spaces? I move that this item be passed, no recommendation.
Second.
Motion before us, no recommendation, properly seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Item number 12 on page 3. This is a resolution approving a contract of employment between the Knox County Board of Education and Dr. James McIntyre, Jr., whereby Dr. McIntyre is employed as superintendent of Knox County Schools. This is Resolution 202.
Do I hear a motion?
I guess point of order, if we are voting to pass this, are we voting to pass what's written here, or are we voting to pass the feature that the law director added? You know, here it's saying that we're voting on a contract. So if we pass this, are we voting on what is in our package, or are we voting on a contract?
We would be voting on what has come to us by the duly elected Board of Education.
By the duly elected Board of Education. But what?
Whatever they sent us. What did they send us? Is that your question?
So, yes, what did the Board of Education send us? It's another great one.
The contract extension of Dr. McIntyre.
Which the law director says is not in proper form. Right. And we cannot.
So we don't have a, okay, so as written, I guess as a question, this did not necessarily, I'll move that we pass without recommendation. Second. I do think we need to discuss it.
Okay, that does not preclude discussion tonight, though. Okay.
Right.
Thank you,
and my light's still on. So.
As the maker of the motion, you wish to speak, Mr. McKenzie.
Yes. Back to the same question, and I guess I will look to the. I'm needing to understand there was a vote by the Board of Education. Those 9 members voted 5-4 to extend the contract with those parameters, and I saw it on TV. They went it over with painstaking details. So that contract was vetted, whether you agree with the vote or not. It was vetted, and a vote was had. So I agree with what you said, Mr. Chair. The Board of Education sent us something. I don't think they sent this. I think this contract came post-Board of Education with edits. And they actually had edits that they went through and resolved at the school board meeting, and now there are additional edits, one significant one which says it's not legal. Now that's subsequent to the Board of Education's actions. So I guess my original question is what are we going to be approving on Monday? Are we going to approve this document that's basically nothing? It says it's not legal. I don't know what the basis of it is, and we can get involved in that a little later on. And I don't even know who to ask the question. I think the board chair, he's not here today, signed this on a date. December the 2nd, looks like. So I think he thought that action, I don't want to speak for him, but I think he thought he was doing the will of the board. So if there's something that can make it invalid later on, that's fine, but as written, I don't want to prove this, and we're going to end up in a daggum lawsuit because there's some huge amount of ambiguity that's been done subsequent to the board vote. The board's will has been, there was a vote, the gavel went down. Now, if there's something that makes it invalid, if we're waiting on something, that's one thing. But to me, they voted yes, and now this says no. So I don't even know what we're voting on.
Okay, let's back up for just a second to the Board of Education meeting past. They had before them a document prepared to extend the contract. They had a second document prepared by the Knox County Law Department that was to be in proper form. And I believe my observations of the meeting were that some things were incorporated into the original contract that the Board of Education then voted on, and that's what they've sent us. And subsequent to that, there's been a reading by the Law Department which would say that there are portions of it that are not in due form. Commissioner Bustler.
Mr. Anders here.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, just a moment. Commissioner McKenzie, or, yes, Commissioner Bustler.
Commissioner Anders had his light on first.
Commissioner Anders.
Yeah, I guess going back to that point of the contract, and, normally when then something comes in on consent from the school system, is it normal practice, Mr. Law Director, that it's already passed legal muster when we get it? In legal form, I guess?
Well, where we find ourselves, and there's some history to this, the contract you have before you is not an amended contract. This contract is the contract that was passed by the Board of Education and presented over here to this committee by the consent agreement, whereby it's a contract that comes before you. Currently, we have an offer extended from the Board of Education to Dr. McIntyre to consider. It is a legal offer. The note added to this contract, once this contract came over for a resolution, it had to be evaluated according to legal form. The board, prior to that, we had discussions during its formation about legal form. The concerns that we have, and there are several, but the major concern here is that when we sign off for you to say this is in legal form and has legal correctness, it is absolute. One of the motions made concerning this contract had to do with the extension of time, and I think the term was unless found by the Attorney General to be unlawful. Well, that within itself creates a legal ambiguity that I can't say as it is written, is it extended or is it not extended? But that's the contract that the board passed and is before you all for consideration. This does, the thing not in legal form does not negate the contract. It says that there are components of the contract that may not be enforceable. Well, number 2 of the contract within itself says it may not be enforceable because they're asking an Attorney General opinion regarding that. So I'm not in a position to say that it's all enforceable until we know for sure that it's enforceable. So I cannot sign off on this and say that it is. This is not a position that the contract itself is illegal. That's not what that means. It means that there are potentially elements within the contract that may not be enforceable. And this just puts everybody on notice that there are concerns about the contract that may not be enforceable. But it is no less a legal offer from the Board of Education to Dr. McIntyre whereby he can accept or not accept.
So what are we, I guess, have you made request to the Attorney General's office to clarify?
I know that the request has been made, but the county cannot make a request. But we have asked the state to make the request as it relates to, the statute says renewal, and then there is a notice for extension. And we need clarity whether a contract that is 4 years can be extended, or can it only be renewed? Or can we have a whole new one? That's the ambiguity, that's the legal question. somewhere in that realm, somebody is going to have to decide. Because what we have before us is one that actually creates a whole new contract while you have another 4-year contract in force. And there's legislative intent and a prior attorney opinions to the contrary. So there's ambiguity out there, and we discussed this with the board at the time of their vote, that there was potential ambiguity as it related to the term. We had one, when we gave them legal form, there was no ambiguity, but we didn't extend the contract beyond the 4-year term. The motion was made at the end to amend the contract in such a way as to get an attorney general opinion. So right now we're waiting to see if it's in legal form for term alone. There are several other issues, but that was the one that has been floating out there this whole time. So,
Would you do, I'm kind of leaning toward, and I'm not going to make a substitute motion, but I'm kind of leaning toward come next Monday, waiting until the Attorney General has, if we're going to get an issue, a request, and if they're going to issue an opinion. But would you send us an email as a commission to stipulate as to what the issues that are with the contract? Because I don't want to vote on something that it's going to come back and put us in a legal bind with the school board. I think it's unwise for us to do that. And so, Monday I'm probably going to lean toward postponing our vote until an Attorney General has made a decision. But I'd also like to know what the other issues are with the contract that you have. And I don't know if that's an executive issue or if it's, I'd like to see sometime over the next week or so.
what you have before you, though, and I want this board, this commission to understand, we have a legal offer tendered to the superintendent by those who have the statutory power to do it. And that vote matters. And this is one of those, it's over here only because of the consent agreement. Had we not had the consent agreement, it's over. You understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And they were on notice, the board, at least I thought they understood till the rhetoric, till the issues that are brought up today. I thought they understood that there were a lot of legal concerns about it, that the law director's office had given them a template of legal form, and then they brought in another one at that night. And then we got it back. What you have before you, and I want this commission to understand, is the exact contract that they voted on and that was signed by the chairman that night. Not a word of that contract has changed. The only thing of the contract was changed was when I reviewed it, it had to do with legal form, nothing more. And Dr. McIntyre currently has an offer extended to him for his consideration from the Board of Education.
Commissioner Bustler?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One of the things that bother me so much about some of these things that comes over is how it gets politicized in everything that's done here. Number one, I was there at the Board of Education meeting that night, and it said that we had concerns, and it was asked, do you have concerns? And Mr. Law Director, I applaud you in repeating that there are concerns of getting this county into a contract that's worth $1 million that we're going to have to fund in some way down the road. But it was told to the Board of Education that it was not in legal form. And they went ahead and voted for it. And that bothered me to some extent, that they would go ahead and vote for a contract that's not in legal form. And I'm, like I say again, I applaud you for mentioning that, but to have somebody that votes something that could come down to haunt the county in financial way is not right. And looking back on this, how it happened and how quickly it happened, and why it was asked by some members on that board to postpone to where they could find out if it was legal or not, or if that was a problem in the wording in the contract, and it was pushed through, and it was pointed out on the BOE that night that if they didn't vote it on that night, the next time they would be able to vote on it, it would be out of the realm of this current body. Is that correct, the BOE body?
Well, that was their understanding. The truth, when we started counting the days after that particular meeting, they probably could have heard it and still could have heard it in January. We researched the thing, and I told a lot of the board members later that it has to do with the general election. But the whole issue, when we were in negotiations, and let everybody understand that the law director's office worked with the chairman of the Board of Education on this particular contract. And then we worked, four people on my staff worked on a legal form contract because we're required to by the charter to make the deadline for their Monday meeting. And we worked on that through the Thanksgiving holidays to get a contract in legal form for the board to vote on. We presented that contract, and that was the one that we felt met legal form due to some legal changes from the Affordable Care Act and some other issues that had happened since the prior contract. At the same time, we did have issues about how it may or may not be extended. And so at the time then, from that moment on, once we give the advice, as we do this board many times, I always say from this point on, it's a policy decision. And the board made a policy decision to create a contract and offer it to Dr. McIntyre. And they have the power to do that. And they're the only ones in the county that have the power to do that. I want this board to understand that. And they voted, and the contract is presented to Dr. McIntyre. We do have some questions, and they understand there's some questions outstanding. They knew that when they voted on the contract, because one of them is in writing that it's outstanding. So there's some ambiguity there in terms of legal form. And we're waiting to hear what that is, but they wanted to go ahead and offer the contract to Dr. McIntyre, subject to some certain conditions. And that's their right and their power to do so.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Law Director. The thing that got me that night, why it seemed like it was pushing so hard, was that 45-day, to get it within that 45-day. Now that you say that we can have it in January to let them vet that and get it back, I don't understand why it's being forced over here, not in legal form for us to vote on. Now, it's taking the oath of office to abide by the Tennessee Constitution and the state laws. This is an illegal form, and in my opinion, I cannot vote for it because it's illegal as of right now by your opinion. It could be legal, and then again, it could not be legal. So we're being forced to vote on an ambiguous document that didn't come to us in proper form. For I don't know what reason, why couldn't it have waited to January to be brought before us? It was not a 100% vote, it was a 5-4 vote, but it was still pushed through. And it seems like it has to do with politics. And I can't vote for that kind of wrangling around here. And so my vote would be either a pass vote or a no vote, because it is in that kind of form as it is now.
Thank you, Commissioner Bussler. I have to apologize. Commissioner Ornby McKenzie, you'll have to arm wrestle. Who's next?
It doesn't matter to me.
Commissioner Ormby can go ahead.
You can go ahead.
All right. So I'll go ahead. I won.
You had your microphone down. He wasn't prepared.
Stronger than I am.
So there's a lot of things that gets thrown out. I heard illegal contract, and I do think you backed a little bit off of that. It's not an illegal contract. It's there's maybe not in legal form, maybe not, and that's what you've asked. So I want to make sure that gets out there to the people. This isn't an illegal contract. The second thing that I have for you, Mr. Law Director, our duties as it relates to this contract, as commanded by the order are financial, correct? Are the issues that are maybe not in legal form financial? Because, and before you say, because we can't issue, I think people, I've heard a couple of times, we're approving this contract. We're not approving this contract.
It's already approved.
Yeah, and yeah, I appreciate you saying that early. So, could you answer that?
Well, this contract is already approved by the Board of Education, and it's extended to Dr. McIntyre until either he accepts it or the board withdraws it. It's an active offer and waiting on acceptance. There are financial implications to some of the areas of the contract where it may or may not be enforceable. You know, if you can extend it to a full 4 years, that has implications, financial implications. If you can only renew it in 2017, that has financial implications. But those are issues that the Board of Education took in consideration, and they voted on it. And bottom line, like I said before, if it weren't for the agreement, it wouldn't even be here.
Right.
They have a statutory power and duty to contract with a director of schools. Now, the question is, how do they have to do that, and how does that affect terms, and how does that affect liquidated damages, and how does that affect different elements of the contract? Those are the questions that some of them are waiting on an opinion on because they asked for the opinion. Right. And that created an legal ambiguity in this contract, which I couldn't come and say it is legal till we know that the ambiguities are gone.
Okay. So, you know, I know the chair is not here, but the vice chair is here. I'd like to ask her if she would like to come and just kind of give maybe her take on what happened on this date that we had to vote, or anything else you want to say.
Thank you, Mr. McKenzie and Chairman Wright, for having me, and Commissioners.
Name and address for the record, please.
Oh, Tracie Sanger, and it's 5216 Catalina Road, 37918.
Thank you, ma'am.
I tell people that all the time, and I forgot myself. It's my understanding, Mr. McKenzie, that the contract we did actually submit the original contract to our law director a week ahead of time. And so I found it interesting that there was all this hoopla about last-minute changes, because a week of time we really should have had all that nailed down. So I thought that was interesting. And we went through time and time again. We took breaks, read over parts. It was our understanding at the time, the law director also agreed that if we did postpone it, that we might not be able to vote for a contract. There were some suggestions about letting the new board members vote that come on, like Commissioner Bustler suggested. But I thought that was interesting too, because that means people would have been in office for almost 2 years before they voted on a contract. So I don't necessarily agree with that. I think the people who are elected for the elected officials need to represent their areas and make the best decisions they can for their community. Regarding the changes, we went through each one. The only one that it does state in there that the attorney, hold on, I wrote it down here, that, let's see, that in the contract it's deemed effective unless the Attorney General deems it ineffective by state law. I would like to clarify that the school board did not actually suggest or request that opinion. That what did come from our law department, and it was over the word extension and renewal. And I did ask for what I did, I've said over and over again, I've been hard on Dr. McIntyre's staff, and I'll be hard here on our law director as well. I'm big on paper trails. I said we need paper trails on everything. And so when it was stated by our law director on November 30th at our meeting that we're waiting for an opinion from our Attorney General on that, there's no paper trail. that it was requested to the state to ask the Attorney General. So was that, I'm big on paper trails. So I have an issue with that. I don't necessarily remember us having an issue with damages. I know that that was changed, but also I have an issue with the fact that it's been 14 days since that contract was approved, 5-4. And I just don't know why we can't say in 14 days whether or not that's an issue, whether or not that is in legal form. So, and I guess my issue, and I talked to the law director, Thomas, over here, or Armstrong, I'm sorry, over here before the meeting, and we talked about some things. And, one of my main issues, and it's been growing, is that, our law director can tell us if it's legal form or not, but he doesn't want to or can't give us advice. And Mr. Bessler, I'd like to, give you an example. Like if I hired you as my attorney and you could only tell me if it was legal form or not, and you couldn't tell me what to do, but you also then submitted a form and said you didn't like it without consulting me, who I'm your client, I would fire you. So, that's one of my main issues with this, is that, I think it comes down to, and you're right, I think it's politics. And, it could come back either way, really, because I saw that going a different way than you did, and that's just a different perspective. But, the reality is it was a 5-4 vote, whether or not you agree with it or not. It was a 5-4 vote. Law Director Armstrong said it was a legal document. It was approved by the board by state statute. And, I don't think there's really much more to that. I think that you all, I think that it was, unfortunately, with things that happen in politics, that was my concern, that this was going to happen tonight, only because that was written on that document that wasn't on there the night that we left. And it wasn't consulted with the board. It wasn't consulted with me. So I was surprised that this came before the board.
Thank you.
Okay.
You're through, Mr. McKenzie. I need to pause this for just a second because we had a sign-up public forum to address this item, and I've seen the lady re-enter the room. Ms. Meyer, would you have 5 minutes? Your name and address for the record, please.
Lyda Mayer, 4721 Clark Drive. I didn't know this was on the agenda. I can't say I'm very informed about the issue, but I know I was appalled to see that they were considering way ahead of time renewing the contract. I think he's done a very bad job. I think the teachers I've talked to think that, and it looks like it's already a done deal, but I'm against him. Sorry, but thank you.
I believe I can get a unanimous on this next motion that we suspend the rules. Because we have a motion on the floor, I would ask that someone move we suspend the rules so we can take a break.
So move.
Second.
All in favor of returning at is 7 o'clock?
Yes.
Good enough. We will reconvene at 7. All in favor? I got to have all in favor.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing none, it must have been unanimous, and we stand till 7 o'clock.